My whole life changed in 6 words. And the worst part? He said them, as if they meant nothing. I'm 38. I have 2 children, a mortgage, a husband I hardly speak to, and now, no grandmother. I don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe because if I don't, I'll go crazy. My grandmother died 3 days ago. Her name was Marilyn Jones. She had a difficult personality, strict, blunt, sharp as a knife. But at the same time, she was the only one who really listened. She called me every Saturday at exactly 10:05 a.m., never at 10 o'clock, never at 10:15, always 10:05. The last time she called was 2 weeks ago. I was in the car. My youngest son was screaming in the back seat, and I was yelling into the phone, "Later, Grandma, later!" She said quietly, "Later is often never." And now I think, maybe she knew she was dying? Maybe she wanted to say goodbye? Today was the family gathering, a formality. That's what they call it. Papers, signatures, a lawyer with a face like a marble statue. My father was there. Peter. He sat in the same chair where my grandmother used to sit. It was as if he was now the center of the table. He looked at me as if I wasn't his daughter, but a maid who'd forgotten to say, "Good morning." And then he said it. Coldly, distantly. "You're not my real daughter." I didn't understand right away. I just heard the words. As if someone was reading a sentence from an instruction manual. "What? Mom, your mom, she got pregnant by someone else. I knew. I always knew. But I decided to raise you." Everyone in the room froze, and he just kept handing out documents, as if he'd just said he forgot to buy milk. I stood in the doorway and felt myself starting to flood. Inside, warm, heavy, as if blood had rushed to my head and forgotten to leave. He turned away from me, as if I were a stranger, and suddenly, I realized I didn't know who I was. And maybe I never had. He erased me from his life with one sentence, and maybe not just from his life, but from my grandmother's will. But I couldn't get rid of the thought, what if he's lying? And if he is lying, why? I was looking at old photos when I suddenly realized my father had never looked at me the way you look at your child. I woke up the next morning with a burning sensation in my chest, as if someone had poured boiling water inside me. My eyes were swollen. My hands were shaking. I looked in the mirror and repeated, "You're real. You're still you. They're just words. Just words." But inside, everything had already cracked. My father, the same man who taught me to ride a bike, who came to my graduation, albeit without flowers, suddenly says that I'm not his. He just crossed me out. I started rummaging through old boxes in the garage, letters, photographs, childhood drawings, and everything was too neat, too clean, as if someone had cleaned up after themselves. The strangest thing? In all the photos of my childhood, Peter always stood a little apart, not a single one of him holding me in his arms, not one where I was sitting on his lap. As a child, I thought, he's just strict, the silent, collected type. But now I saw it for what it was. Distance, coldness. I called my mom, just to hear her voice. She knew right away. "He told you, didn't he?" "Is it true?" A pause, a long one. Then she exhaled, as if 1,000 pounds had been lifted off her chest. "I was young, stupid, in love with a boy my mother kept me away from. He was not the one my family wanted me to be with." "Who is he? You wouldn't recognize him." And she hung up. It felt like my past had vanished in an instant. No memories, no truth, not even anger, just emptiness. The next day, a letter arrived from a lawyer. It was about the will. At the request of Mr. Peter Jones, regarding proof of direct kinship with the late Marilyn Jones. Everything inside me tightened. He didn't just say it. He was preparing. He was doing everything he could to make me disappear. From the will, from the family, from history. He wasn't just trying to forget me. He wanted to erase me, legally, biologically, completely. But I knew one thing. If he was so afraid of the truth, then the truth could change everything. I entered my grandmother's study as if it were a sanctuary, and left with proof that I had been kept in the dark my entire life. I drove to her house, not for the funeral. That had already happened. Just to the house. I still had the key. No one had asked for it back. I think Peter thought I'd just disappear. Everything was as usual. Shelves with porcelain, the smell of soap, the pattern on the carpet. The one my grandmother hated but never changed. I went into her study, the room where children were not allowed. Ever. Not even me. There was a safe, and I knew the code. Not because she told me, but because I saw it once. I was 16. I remember how she dialed it. 0719, her birthday. I froze when the safe opened. There were documents, old ones. Some were 40 years old. Birth certificates, letters. One envelope was signed, "Peter, don't open without me." But he never opened it. Or he pretended not to. Under the letters was a photograph. A man, young, in military uniform. Not Peter, handsome, dark eyes, very familiar. On the back, Matthew, 1984. I was born in 1985. My breath caught in my throat. I remembered how my grandmother once said, when I was crying after a fight with my father, "You're not like him, and thank God for that." Back then, I thought it was just a generational conflict. But now it sounded like the truth, buried in silence. I took the photo and the letter. I left without turning off the light in her office. He can cross me out all he wants, but I'm going to write my name back in. I just didn't know yet that the letter in my hands would change everything. I tore open the envelope, and the first thing I felt wasn't fear, but a strange sense of betrayal frozen in the paper. I didn't open the letter right away. It lay on the kitchen table for 3 days. I avoided it like a bomb. But on the night my eldest son asked me, "Why are you crying so much, Mom?" I sat down, took a pair of scissors, and cut open the edge. Inside was a short note. My grandmother's handwriting, strict as ever, neat, but with a slight tremor. It was as if she had written it, not for Peter, but against him. "Peter, if you're reading this without me, it means you've done it again. I warned you. If you didn't tell her yourself, I would. She has a right to know. You were afraid of Matthew. You've always been afraid of him, because he was real, because she was drawn to him. You said you were saving the family. But in fact, you're destroying it. It's not your decision. M." I reread it 10 times. First, every sentence. Then, every word. You were afraid of Matthew. She has a right to know. She is me. That meant Grandma knew. She knew everything, and she was on my side. Peter had been silent not out of nobility, but out of fear. Matthew was a threat, to his control, to the family's version of history. I started searching. I asked my mom again. She hung up. I looked for Matthew's name in the family Bible. Grandma kept records of all births and deaths, and there, on the last page, was a faint pencil entry. Matthew Jones, 1964, gone, 1985. There was no died, just gone. I began to suspect. He wasn't a stranger. He was Marilyn's son, one of her children, one of those they didn't talk about. Peter wasn't my father, but Matthew, he might have been her youngest son. Alienated, forgotten, erased. And if that's true, then I was her granddaughter by blood, the only one. If I'm right, everything Peter said is a lie, and the truth makes me not an outcast, but an heir. I have to find Matthew. If he's alive, he's the only one who can tell me who I really am. I didn't know what my real father looked like, but I knew what the pain he left behind looked like. I didn't know where to start. No address, no phone number, not even a photo, just a name, a year of birth, and one faded line. Gone. Gone. Does that mean dead? Ran away? Renounced? Was he taken? I started with the archives, the old city registry. It was hell. I had to go to the library. Yes, a real library, with lamps, and the smell of old paper. An elderly employee, Mrs. Larson, leaned toward me and whispered like I was looking for a criminal. Matthew Jones. That name used to be heard a lot around here, in the 80s. She found a clipping from a local newspaper. The headline read, "The Jones family remains silent after the disappearance of their youngest son. The police have closed the case." The date, October 1985. I was 3 months old. Inside, a black and white photo. The same man, from the letter, from the safe. Matthew was missing. Not dead, not gone, vanished. The article? Empty. No conclusions, no details. Just gossip. He was last seen on the shore. He had problems with his father. He may have been involved with a woman who had a child. Was that woman my mother? I went outside. I was shaking. It felt like I was standing at the edge of a well and looking down for the first time. I called my mother again. Matthew, was he my father? Silence. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let Peter raise me if he hated you? And then she broke. Because I had no choice, Amanda. Because he disappeared. He disappeared. I waited for him. I hoped. And then your grandmother came and said everything would be under control. Under control? She chose Peter. She said he would take care of things. That he wouldn't let shame destroy the Jones name. Shame. I'm a disgrace. And then it all became clear. Grandma wasn't a saint. She didn't stay silent because she feared Peter. She stayed silent because she made a choice. She wanted to save the family, not for me, but for the name. But there was one clue. A name flashed in the article. Ginny McCoy. Witness. Matthew's friend. She was 18 at the time. I found her. On social media. She's in her 50s now. Lives 2 hours away. I wrote, "Hello, my name is Amanda Jones. I'm looking for information about someone I may have known. Matthew Jones, 1985. I think he may be my father." And then I clicked send. And for the first time, in all this time, I felt truly afraid. Because if she replied, maybe I would finally hear the voice from the past that I had spent my whole life trying to drown out. Only I didn't know yet that this voice wasn't just a call, it would be a scream. She replied with just 5 words. And after that, I couldn't breathe the way I used to. She replied an hour and a half later. I couldn't believe it. The message was short. "I know who you are. We need to talk. This isn't something we can text about." It felt like my heart skipped a beat. We agreed to meet at a cafe, on the highway. I arrived early. I sat there like a schoolgirl waiting for a parent-teacher conference. My coffee grew cold, but I didn't. When she walked in, I recognized her immediately. She had heavy eyes, the kind that had seen too much and couldn't forget. She sat down across from me. No hello, no smile, no small talk. She just said, "You're his daughter. You have his eyes. Only yours are tired. His were alive. It was like I'd been hit by an electric shock. Was he really my father? Yes, I was with him that day, when it all happened. She paused, as if deciding whether to keep going. He wasn't killed, if that's what you're thinking. He left on his own, but not because he wanted to, because they wouldn't let him stay. Who? His mother. And your uncle? Father? Peter. I clenched the cup so tightly it almost cracked. They said the child would ruin everything, that you couldn't show up, that I had to convince him to disappear, so the family wouldn't fall apart. And you? Did you convince him? I tried. And then he disappeared. I don't know if he left on his own, or if someone helped him. I haven't seen him since that night. Did you love him? She was silent, for a long time. Then she simply said, I loved him, but it wasn't enough. I took out the photo. I showed it to her. Is this him? She nodded. He said he wanted to be a father. He said he'd buy a used stroller, that he'd figure it out, and then he disappeared. I felt something sink in my chest. Not collapse, but sink. Quietly, silently, like the floor, beneath my feet. Do you know where he is? No. I looked, even through military bases. He's like he vanished into thin air. Did he know about me? Yes, he did. And he was waiting for you to find him one day. I left the cafe feeling like I had found my father, and lost him at the same time. But Ginny left me one thing. An old address, a place Matthew once called, the place where he could hide from everything. I had to go there. I was traveling to a place I knew nothing about, except that it was possibly where the man who saved my life had once hidden. The house was far away, outside the city, in a place that was neither a village nor a forgotten station. On the map, it was just a dot. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not my children, not my husband. I just said, I'm going away to sort out some paperwork. In reality, I was going back to the past, or to its ghost. The journey took almost 4 hours. I was silent the entire time. No music, no radio, just the sound of hills, fields, broken fences, and inside, a hum. Not noise, but an internal hum, like the blood in my ears was louder than my own thoughts. When I saw the house, I was scared, lonely, crooked, an old porch, a peeling door. The mailbox had a worn nameplate, but the letters J and S were still visible. I knocked. Once. Then again. Silence. I was about to leave when the door opened. A man stood in the doorway, about 60. Stubble, deep wrinkles. He didn't look surprised. You? He fell silent. You're Amanda. I didn't breathe. He nodded. Didn't ask how I found him. Didn't ask why I had come. I knew you would come. I didn't know when, but I knew you'd come. I just stared, frozen, speechless. He stepped back. Come in. You have questions. I have answers. I went in. It was dark inside, and it smelled like dust and coffee. On the wall, a photograph. My grandmother, young, stern. You knew about me this whole time? Yes. Why did you leave? Because they left me no choice. Why didn't you come back? He looked straight into me. Because I didn't know if you were alive. They said you were dead. I sat down. My shoulders shook. They lied to you, just like they lied to me. He came closer, sat opposite me, carefully. I tried to find you, Amen. The letters all came back. I came to the city. I watched from afar. I saw you walking with Peter. I thought, maybe you were happy. I was, until it all turned out to be a lie. He closed his eyes, was silent for a long time. Then he said, You don't have to forgive me, but know this, I didn't disappear. I was banished. And in that moment, I realized something. He hadn't abandoned me. He had been stolen from me. But now that I had him back, I had to get my name back too. I thought the worst was behind me, but it turned out the worst begins when you come home with the truth to a place where it is not welcome. I returned the next day, not home, to the lawyer's office. Peter had one advantage: lies. But now I had Matthew, his confession, the photo, my grandmother's letter, and a DNA sample. We handed it over that same evening. The lawyer looked at me as if I had suddenly become a factor, not a daughter, not a granddaughter, not even a client, but a variable. "If the relationship is confirmed," he said, "you are the direct heir of Marilyn Jones." I nodded. "And then," he added, "Peter Jones may try to contest the will. Let him try." 2 days later, the meeting, the last one, the official announcement. I came dressed in black, not for mourning, out of principle. Peter was sitting in the same place where it all began. When I entered, he didn't even turn around, but when he saw the folder in my hands, he froze. "Why did you come?" he asked coldly. "To take my place." He smirked. "You're not part of this family." "Then why are you so afraid? That I'll stay in it?" Silence. The lawyer began to read. Everything was official. In the absence of direct descendants of Peter Jones, the property, assets, and real estate shall be distributed among the closest blood relatives. And there it was. The test results. 99.98% match. Matthew was my biological father. Marilyn was my grandmother. By blood. No ifs, no ands, no buts. I looked straight at Peter. As he clenched the armrest so hard his knuckles turned white. "You knew," I said. "You knew all of this. I was protecting the family." From whom? From a child? From the truth? From shame. I stood up. "Then know this. That name will now be inherited. From the family name to the china cups." He didn't answer. He just turned away. And in that moment, I realized he hadn't lost. On the day I found the letter, he lost on the day he decided he could rewrite someone's life for his own convenience. They wanted me to disappear, but I was the last one left. Even the truth doesn't heal everything, especially when you've been taught to keep quiet for so many years. They thought victory meant money, but I learned. The real battle begins when you're left with what you saved and what you lost. The first morning after everything happened, I woke up in my grandmother's house, alone, in her bed, in the very room where I wasn't even allowed to stand barefoot as a child. Everything was the same: the fringed lampshade, the old portrait on the wall, the lavender-scented blanket. And suddenly, it was mine, officially, legally, and completely foreign. I went to the kitchen. There, in a drawer by the refrigerator, I found my childhood drawings. She had kept everything, even the one where I drew my family, myself, my mother, and my father. But I drew Peter, because I didn't know how to draw someone I had never seen. Now I knew. I met Matthew a couple of days later. We sat on the shore of the lake where he had once disappeared. He was silent for a long time. "You know what's strange? I always thought that if I ever met you, everything would be easier." "Was it?" "No." We both laughed. He handed me a box. Old, cardboard, inside, letters, yellowed, written to me. He had written them without knowing if they'd ever reach me, and he had kept them, hundreds of them. I held them in my hands like evidence of a life that had been stolen from me. "I'm sorry," he said. "I had to fight, even if they kicked me out, even if they cursed me." I didn't answer right away. Then I whispered, "The main thing is that you stayed." He looked at me. "And you survived." And that was true. But I knew Peter and I would never even be enemies again. There was nothing between us. I went to see him once, just to see how he was living. He opened the door, silently. "I didn't come here to fight," I said. "Then why?" "So you know I don't need your forgiveness." He wanted to say something, but couldn't. He just closed the door, slowly. And that was the end. Not victory, not revenge, just the end. They wanted me to disappear, but I stayed, and now I'm speaking out. There's only one thing left to do. Decide what to do with this truth, and with this new life, in which I am no longer a stranger. Sometimes the most important inheritance is not a house, not money, not even a name. It's the ability to no longer remain silent. A month passed. The house became quieter. It no longer felt like a war zone. I hung an old photograph of my grandmother in the living room, not for forgiveness, but as a reminder. A reminder of how much the things you don't say can mean. Matthew came over on weekends. We learned to talk. At first, cautiously, then more deeply. He brought his old cassettes. He listened to my children playing. Sometimes he looked at them like they were something impossible. And one day he said, "I can't give you back your childhood, but I can make sure I don't miss your present." I let him stay, the night, then, the whole weekend. We didn't become a picture-perfect family, but we became people who know the truth and don't run from it. I opened the letter my grandmother never sent. It was signed with my name. "You are not a mistake. You are the point where our family could start over. If I don't get to tell you this, at least let the paper be honest. I am proud of you. M." I cried, not from pain, but from purity, from the fact that inside, finally, there was no more crowding. And then, I went to see my mother. We sat in silence. She handed me a cup. Her hands were shaking. "I didn't know how to protect you," she said. "That's why I agreed to everything." "I know. Are you angry?" "I used to be, not anymore." "Why?" "Because I chose to live." And that became my choice. I no longer felt like I had to prove that I existed. I existed. I stood up and hugged my mother. It was easy. There was no heaviness, and I left. The sun was shining outside, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a stranger in my own life. I am not a secret. I am a story that no one can rewrite,